Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling something that literally every single one of us has dealt with, but honestly, very few people know how to fix the right way. We're going to look at the actual physical mechanics of a squeaky door hinge. You know the exact sound I'm talking about, right? That awful, high-pitched horror movie creak when you're just trying to sneak out of a room without waking anybody up. Well, we aren't just going to talk about how to quiet that squeak for a day or two. We're going to completely break down the physics of why these hinges bind up in the first place and look at the exact techniques top home improvement experts use to banish that noise for good. To put the real-world stakes into perspective here, just listen to this incredibly frustrated homeowner from the show Ask This Old House. He said, "I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That squeak is like an air raid siren, wakes my son up." I mean, how relatable is that? When you've got a sleeping toddler or a partner who desperately needs their rest, a squeaky hinge isn't just a minor annoyance anymore. It's a major quality of life issue. You end up tiptoeing around your own house, basically held hostage by a tiny piece of metal. It completely validates the frustration we all feel when a simple door turns into an obstacle course. But this leads us to a really important question, and honestly, the core mystery of our explainer today. Why do squeaks always seem to come back? I'm willing to bet you've tried to fix a squeaky door before. You hear the noise, you grab a can of whatever spray lube is sitting under your kitchen sink, you give the hinge a quick blast, and you walk away feeling like a genius because it goes quiet. But then, 2 weeks later, the air raid siren is back. So why does that happen? Why do our past fixes fail us so consistently? Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at the universal problem, bust the quick spray myth, walk through removing the hinge pin, choose the right lube, and finally, talk about fixing misalignment. Starting right off with part 1, the universal problem. The squeaky door is honestly the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you own a home from the 1940s, rent a brand new apartment, or you're a hardcore DIYer, it plagues us all. The whole weight of a solid door is resting entirely on these tiny, interlocking metal barrels and a single metal pin, which creates an incredible amount of friction. Over time, whatever factory grease was in there dries out, metal starts rubbing directly against metal, and boom, you get that horrific noise. Now, to tackle it, people usually take one of two approaches. You've got the quick spray, which is just a surface-level blast on the outside of an assembled hinge, and then you've got the deep clean, where you actually take the pin out and lubricate the core of the hinge itself. It's the classic debate, right? The temporary Band-Aid versus the permanent mechanical solution. Which brings us to Section 2, the quick spray myth. This is the intuitive fix that almost everybody tries first. You hear a squeak, you spray the squeak. And there's actually a really interesting division in our source material on this. On one hand, sources like DIY Pinto show a super popular, straightforward method, just taking a can of standard WD-40 and spraying it right onto the fully assembled hinge. And yeah, immediately after spraying, the noise stops. But experts from channels like Silver Symbol and Ask This Old House impartially point out a massive flaw with this approach. Standard WD-40 and similar multi-purpose oils are thin. When you spray them onto the outside of an assembled hinge, they don't deeply penetrate into the core where the actual friction is happening. And because they're such thin liquids, they wear out or evaporate really quickly. The result? The noise is back in days, maybe weeks. It's just a temporary fix. So let's escalate things in Section 3, removing the hinge pin. If we want to stop playing this endless game of whack-a-mole with our doors, we have to move to the proper long-term fix. But before you start tearing your house apart, you need the right tools. Based on our experts, you're going to need a small hammer, a common nail or a punch, some needle nose pliers, wooden shims, or honestly just a stack of books works fine, your thick lubricant, and a paper plate or some napkins to keep things tidy. And what is so fantastic about this is how approachable it is. You don't need to drop $100 on a fancy toolkit. You probably have literally every single one of these items sitting in a drawer somewhere right now. Now let's actually put those tools to work. The mechanics here are brilliant because they're so simple. Step 1, open the door just a little bit and support the bottom edge with your shims or a book. The expert from Chavez DIY strongly recommends doing this because the second you remove a pin, that door is going to want to drop and shift, which makes getting the pin back in later a total nightmare. The shims take all that weight off the hinge. Step 2, take your nail, but do not hold it with your fingers. As Silver Symbol points out, you want to grip that nail tight with your needle nose pliers and place the tip right at the bottom of the hinge. Step 3, just gently tap the nail upward with your hammer. Using the pliers saves your fingers from getting smashed, and the nail drives that squeaky pin straight up and out. But hey, before you run off to try this, please pay attention to this absolutely crucial warning from our sources. Avoid the screwdriver trap. A lot of people try to wedge a flathead screwdriver right under the top lip of the hinge pin and hammer it upward. The problem is screwdrivers slip, and when it slips, you are going to slam hard metal straight into your nicely painted door frame. You'll mar the wood, and you could easily ruin the finish of the hinge itself. So using that nail from the bottom method completely eliminates this risk. Moving on to Section 4. Choosing the right lubricant. Okay, now that we have the pin successfully removed, we need to talk chemistry, because not all lubricants are created equal. The compound you choose literally dictates whether you get to sleep in on Saturday morning or not. Looking at the spectrum of solutions here, up at the top we have our thin multi-purpose oils and standard WD-40. Awesome for a quick fix, but again, they only last days to weeks. Moving down, Ask This Old House mentions dry graphite powder. Now, this is definitely an improvement. It creates a dry, slippery surface that buys you weeks to months, but it still eventually wears away. But check out those bottom two options. This right here is the secret to a decade of silence. Investing in a thick grease like Superlube or a specialized dry lube with PTFE, which is Teflon, gives you incredible longevity. You apply these directly to the bare pin, which creates a thick, super durable barrier that just will not wear away under the weight of the door. In fact, Silver Symbol estimates a thick grease coat can last 10 years or more. No way, right? So let's say you've picked up your thick grease or Teflon spray. Here is the actual tactile process for putting it on. First, take a good look at the pin you just popped out. If it's rusted or pitted, give it a really light sanding just to smooth out the surface. Next, throw on some gloves and apply a heavy, generous coat of that grease or dry lube right onto the pin itself. Just really rub it in there. Finally, reinsert the pin into the hinge. And here is a phenomenal pro tip. When you're tapping the pin back down into place, put a small block of wood between the pin and your hammer. This lets you drive the pin down firmly without denting or scratching up that nice decorative metal top. Now, you might finish up the top and middle hinges and think, all right, I'm done. But our sources offer a very vital reminder. Don't forget the bottom hinge. If you leave the bottom hinge dry, it's going to completely ruin your hard work, because it will eventually start squeaking too. The issue is, the bottom hinge is usually so close to the floor that you literally don't have enough room to swing your hammer upward to pop the pin out. But Silver Symbol shares this amazingly practical tip for tight spaces. Just turn your hammer sideways. It feels kind of awkward at first, but it gives you exactly the leverage you need to pop that stubborn bottom pin right out. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Fixing Misaligned Hinges. What happens if you've pulled the pins, greased them up perfectly, put everything back together, and the door still squeaks? Well, in that case, lack of lubrication simply isn't your root cause. The issue is hinge alignment. This refers to the proper gap spacing between each alternating hinge barrel. If you look really closely at a healthy hinge, there are actually microscopic gaps between those interlocked metal pieces so they can rotate freely. So here's the absolutely crucial point. If those barrels are physically bent and they are actively grinding directly against each other, the friction is so extreme that no amount of heavy grease or Teflon spray is ever going to permanently stop the noise. The metal is literally crushing the lubricant completely out of the way. Which brings up a pretty fascinating question. Why do hinges even get misaligned in the first place? Well, Ask This Old House reveals a really surprising hidden culprit. It turns out a lot of standard door hinges are made of surprisingly soft, inexpensive metal. If you accidentally drop the hinge on the floor before you install it, or ironically, if you hammer the hinge pin down way too hard during a repair, the sheer force of that can physically bend those little metal loops right out of alignment. So yeah, you might accidentally be creating your own squeak. And this brilliantly illustrates the elegance of home repair, because sometimes the problem actually provides the exact solution you need. If a barrel is bent, you can use the hinge pin itself as a lever to fix it. Here's the exact process the experts recommend. Step 1, remove the hinge pin entirely. Step 2, get up close and identify which specific metal loop is bent out of shape. Then, take your sturdy steel hinge pin and insert it just partway into that single bent barrel. Step 3, gently tap the side of the protruding pin with your hammer. You're basically using the pin to lever and stretch that soft metal barrel right back into perfect straight alignment. After that, just re-grease it, drop it back in, and enjoy the absolute silence. So, there you have it. You now completely understand the physics of the squeak. You know exactly why that quick spray fails, how to safely get those pins out, the magic of thick lubricants, and even how to literally bend metal back into perfect alignment. Armed with the right tools, the right lube, and a little bit of structural knowledge, you are entirely ready to take your house back. So, look around your home. What's the next squeak you'll silence? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. I really hope you feel empowered to tackle this DIY project yourself, and I can't wait to explore our next topic with you.